All right, guys. So James Gunman has talked about the DCU a bit more in an interview. He said a bunch of random things, and have kind of compiled all of the interesting ones together. So we're gonna talk about it all in this video. Okay, stay tuned. Okay, the Robert Pattinson as Batman in the DCU thing is in here somewhere, but there's a bunch of other things to do. So don't feel too clickbaited now. So we'll roll with the first clip.
I don't think we've ever seen the big science fiction Silver Age Superman aspects that we have in our movie, and we've never seen, you know, uh, we've never seen this. You'll see when the movie comes out.
Okay.
We've never seen this specific part of Superman's life.
So he was basically asked like what aspect of Superman is unique to this movie that we've never seen before in film. So I'll be honest, I'm not much of a comic book reader, so when he says the Silver Age, Superman, I don't necessarily know what that means, but the whole sci-fi aspect does actually sound pretty interesting to me. I imagine what all that means is that I think Metropolis is just going to feel a little like more fantastical and sci-fi than the Snyder Metropolis necessarily, which his whole take on Superman was like, what if Superman was real, bro? What if Superman existed in our world, bro? By the way, not trying to hate on Snyder too much, okay? Snyder fans, don't come at me, okay? I like Man of Steel, okay? Third act, little too long, little too much action in my opinion. I think it gets a little overbearing at certain points, but I like Man of Steel, okay? So don't come at me, all right? Don't come at me. But yeah, I think that James Gunn's Metropolis is probably just gonna feel a little more heightened and not so grounded in realism. And then he also mentions at the end there a new aspect of Superman that we've never seen before. I feel like what that might be is Crypto, right? Because we've never had Crypto in a movie. Well, in a live action movie. Technically, we had Crypto the Superdog in League of Super Pets, right? Was it DC League of Super Pets? Something like that? It was the animated one. But in live action, we haven't had one. Technically, we've had Crypto in Smallville. I'm currently watching Smallville for the first time. And Crypto kind of shows up in that, but he's not he's not like a Kryptonian dog. He's like a regular dog that they inject with superpowers. But then the superpowers are temporary. So he only has superpowers for an episode, and then he just loses them, and he's just a normal dog, which is kind of funny. So I wonder if that's what he's talking about. But to be fair, he could also be talking about something else entirely. But either way, I'm just really curious for that first trailer so that we get a look at what exactly he means by Silver Age sci-fi Superman. Okay, and then next up, he starts talking a little bit about Lex Luthor.
Nick is he's imposing. You go, oh, fuck, poor Superman. That's the thing that we never see. You don't, and not in film. Sometimes in the comics, you go, "Oh, Superman's fucked because Lex is so smart and so good at what he's doing."
Right.
But in the movies, you're going, "Lex is about to get fucked."
I mean, I think that there's probably some truth to that. Definitely. Again, not please don't get too mad, Snyder fans. But Jesse Eisenberg's Superman. Not exactly the most intimidating Lex Luthor, with this whole I don't know, to this day some of those acting decisions a little confuddling. But yeah, I think it's kind of cool that we're maybe gonna get a more intimidating Lex Luthor because I'm currently watching Smallville. Michael Rosenbaum is great, but I think they're still developing him into the supervillain mastermind Lex Luthor. He's still kind of he's still very much, I feel, living in, at least where I'm at in Smallville. It does feel like he's living a bit in his father's shadow a bit. And he definitely does make a lot of mistakes. Although he is actually still pretty intimidating in Smallville. I would still argue that, to be honest with you. But yeah, I think that's also interesting. I will also note I haven't watched the original Superman movies either, like the Richard Donner ones. I did watch Superman Returns as a child. I don't remember too much about it. So in any case, yeah, I'm definitely think it'll be interesting to see this version of Lex Luthor, like, like Lex Luthor just being like a real like super villain mastermind and whatnot. I think that sounds cool.
I've contemplated it. Yeah, we've contemplated it. Gotta contemplate everything, John. It's like, we gotta talk about everything. Like it just
Right.
mean like, and then see, like you can't these questions you can't answer because people are too,
Right. Yeah, you would be an
people are,
idiot not to have
they
that. I
make
mean, I get
everything
it.
to mean. You'd be an
No,
idiot not to think what's this gonna, how does this go? How does this go? But I'm
right.
committed to both telling stories in the DCU and telling Elseworld story. I want the freedom to tell Elseworld stories. We want to be able to, you know, tell
Yeah.
a story in which, Superman's very different, or tell a Red Sun story or whatever. It's like we want to be able to play with these characters in different ways. And
Sorry, I should have introduced that clip actually. He was just asked if he's considered having Robert Pattinson be the mainline DCU Batman. And I wanted to like play that full clip because there are definitely a lot of headlines running around being like James Gunn considered Robert Pattinson to be the DCU Batman. And to be fair, I'm also going to be using that as the title for this video. But it should just be noted that it's like, when you listen to how he said it, it doesn't sound like it was ever like a serious consideration. It's just like an honest answer of like, yeah, obviously we talked about it a bit, but I don't think it was ever a serious consideration. I don't think that Matt Reeves ever wanted that. I don't think he obviously now I don't think he wants to do that. And I appreciate that, like, Matt Reeves absolutely could have just, like, kicked Matt Reeves out of the process or, forced him to do it. But it seems to be the case that James Gunn just doesn't want to be that kind of executive where I don't think he really wants to compromise people's artistic visions. I don't think he really wants to do things like that. And I appreciate that. Although, to be fair, not to glaze James Gunn too much, Matt Reeves probably he also probably has a lot of power and influence within DC. Like, yes, James Gunn is the CEO, but like when the Batman is like your only viable franchise, right? Like Matt Reeves' Batman franchise is the only viable film franchise that DC currently has, right? Like everything since the first Aquaman movie, I believe, has flopped, except for Matt Reeves' Batman. So you have to let Matt Reeves cook. Like you have to let him do his thing. So yeah, not to glaze James Gunn too much, but I do think at the end of the day, he still does have that perspective, of like, hey, listen, if we're gonna let Matt Reeves make his movie, we're gonna let him make his movie. I think it's fair to say. And then they also asked him about Dave Bautista as Bane, which has been a rumor that's floated around for years.
I don't know if Dave wants to be Bane anymore. He used to want to be Bane, but I think he's
Now he's slimmed down. He's too thin to be Bane.
I think that's true. I think I think Dave would much rather be another character than Bane right now. I think that's probably the case. So I of course love Dave and want to work with Dave again. I'm not sure he wants to be Bane anymore.
So yeah, I mean, James Gunn is essentially saying that Dave Bautista is probably not going to be Bane. And he, at the very least, he's not cast as Bane right this moment. And I mean, yeah, like Dave Bautista has been talking about how he doesn't really want to be like the big muscular guy in movies anymore. I don't think he wants to put in the work and effort that it takes to maintain that like massive physique that he used to have. And if you see him in pictures recently, he's very much slimmed down. And I mean, I think that's I can respect that. You know, like I think you get to a certain age where it's like, yeah, I'm good. Even The Rock, like if you've seen him in the on the set photos of Moana 2, it looks like he has a muscle suit. Even The Rock is getting to that age where it looks like he's not, either he doesn't want to, or maybe it seems like he might not be able to put on the muscle that he used to be able to just have on like year round at all times. So yeah, man. I mean, I don't think we're gonna see Dave Bautista as Bane. I think we're gonna see him in the DCU. One of the other big fan casts has been Hugo Strange. I think that would be a fun role for Dave Bautista to try out. You know, I think he's grown into a pretty strong actor. So I think it's cool that Dave Bautista is at a point where you don't have to cast him as a Bane, right? Or like as a Bane type character, like a big brute who, you know, you don't necessarily need to be the strongest actor to play, right? Although to be fair, if you take in the more intellectual elements of Bane, you actually do need a strong actor to play him. But yeah, I think Dave Bautista is at a point in his career where he can play a various amount of characters, which good for him, you know. But then they also asked him straight up about that Deathstroke Bane movie that has been rumored for a while.
Deathstroke and Bane, though, might be something that's in the ether, that's somewhere out there. Oh, we lost the connection. Weird. Okay, let's end with this, James.
Yeah, what happened? What I lost that last.
That's so convenient. Strange. Okay.
Yeah, that was a weird moment. It's like, I feel like James Gunn essentially confirmed that yes, that Deathstroke Bane movie that was rumored a while back. That, I'll be honest, I looked at that rumor and I was like, really? It seems weird. Like it just doesn't seem like a. It just doesn't seem like a project that would naturally come about. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, it seems like that reaction from James Gunn kind of indicates to me that that is a project that they're at the very least like talking about. So we'll see. We'll see what comes from that. I don't know. Like, do Bane and Deathstroke have a relationship in the comics? Like, do they team up often? I don't know. Well, I guess we'll see how where they go with that. I don't know.
I am very weird. I am very weird about my superhero movies, and that I have to understand practically what's going on. Like, if something happens that is internally inconsistent, it drives me fucking crazy. So it's like, I think that is a very big pain in the ass when you're making a movie, say, about Supergirl in outer space. No, I think that
James, the physics isn't going to work. I'm just going to tell you that right up top. Yeah.
Greg and Anna could kill me because it all has to fit in, together, and her powers have to be the same as his powers, and blah blah blah. So that kind of stuff, I'm a maniac about, and also things making sense just in terms of connecting to each other and not overtly. But also, there's some things you got to be kind of loose about,
Yeah.
There's lots of product names in Peacemaker. That's lots of, he's mentioning celebrities all the time, Superman's a different sort of world. There aren't really, it's not about real people in a real world. It's about this mythical DC universe. So it's different. Those are two stories created by the same person in the same universe. And even those are different in terms of the vibrations they're giving off. And someone could say that's internally inconsistent. But I'm not against, I always loved in the comic books that artists had their own ways of representing, say, Metropolis.
Right.
So I'm going to come in with Metropolis. If somebody else, creates Metropolis in the future, they might have a slightly different way of looking at Metropolis. And I'm cool with that. I don't want everything to look the same all the time. I think the audience is smart enough. They can say, oh yeah, this is all connected, but also come on.
Okay. So, that was an interesting little moment there where he it doesn't directly address it, but he's essentially touching on some of his, unlike one of his past comments about DCU canon, where it was in an IGN interview where he kind of like laughed off the question about DCU canon, essentially being like, listen guys, it's not the real world, like you guys, canon, who canon flammin', who really cares? At least I'm not quoting him exactly, but that was kind of the vibe that he gave off, and it worried a lot of people, right? Because, at the end of the day, like, if I'm watching a good movie or a good TV show, or if I'm playing a fantastic video game, am I going to necessarily care if something is inconsistent within the DCU? Like, at the end of the day, probably not. I'm just being real. I probably won't care that much. However, would I like for the canon to be consistent? Do I want them to try to make the canon consistent and have the movies and shows fit in with each other? Yeah. And this answer actually kind of indicates to me that James Gunn is going to be doing that. He is going to be trying to make everything fit together, right? Like, especially when he's talking about how he's working with the writers of Supergirl to have Kara's powers be, the same as Clark's powers. That's okay, cool. I like that. I like that he's being insistent on that type of thing. But I can also appreciate what he's talking about. But when he's talking about the specific differences between Peacemaker and Superman, that there are some differences as far as the vibes of those two projects, where like Peacemaker apparently, I guess, is going to have a lot of references to the real world, whereas Superman is going to feel more mythical. It like they kind of mentioned how it's going to feel more like sci-fi. Which I don't mind that either, as long as like what we're currently dealing with, where like, Creature Commandos has just come out. What was I saying? I had to take a phone call. I think I was talking about DCU canon and about how I think that what's the current confusion with this is what I was saying. The current confusion with Creature Commandos, and it's like Rick Flag is mentioning stuff from the Suicide Squad, so we're asking all these questions of like, okay, so if Peacemaker killing Rick Flag is canon, does that mean that Harley Quinn is canon? And if that Harley Quinn is canon, does that mean that Jared Leto's Joker is canon? Like, all of these like weird things that we're talking about here, like, I don't think that those like weird, crazy, canonical like mishaps and confusions, I don't think that that's going to carry forward in the DCU. I think that stuff is only limited to now, where James Gunn is just kind of trying to force feed his DCEU stuff into the DCU. I hope, and this might be cope, this might be me coping, but I think that moving forward, we're not going to have to worry about that kind of thing. Like, I think this is just now because of the hard universe reset that we're dealing with. So we shall see. We shall see. And then last thing here, he mentions that he actually talks about whether or not he's going to do Watchmen. He was asked if he's going to do anything with Watchmen. This is what he had to say.
I don't know. I really like, I really respect Alan Moore, I will say. I really respect him. And so yeah. But that's it. I did love the TV show. So
TV show was pretty great. Yeah.
So that's interesting, right? I feel like this is the first studio executive that has any amount of respect for a comic book writer. So yeah, I think that's kind of cute, that he, Alan Moore famously, like from what I understand, doesn't really like adaptations of his comic books. I don't think he likes either the Watchmen movie, nor I would assume the Watchmen TV show. So yeah, I mean, I kind of like the idea that James Gunn is like, listen, I don't really want to mess with that if Alan Moore doesn't really want us to. But then I also like how he's not disrespecting the adaptations, right? He's like, yeah, although I gotta be honest, I really like that TV show. So I kind of like that answer. I don't think that James Gunn is gonna mess with Watchmen. I don't think he is gonna put it into the DCU or anything weird like that, because I know that a couple years ago DC did have they did like a universe event where the Watchmen entered into the mainline DC universe. So I don't think we're gonna see anything like that under James Gunn, which yeah, I think is respectable. Because we're not used to seeing studio executives care about the input of comic book writers, which that is what it is it not? So we'll see. That's just a bunch of random stuff that James Gunn talked about in regards to the DCU. I thought all of it was interesting, so I figured I'd make a video covering it. So yeah, let me know what you think about any and all of that in the comments down below, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.